And it's interesting because the organizations that I've worked with that truly tend to rise to the top and excel tend to share a mission statement. They tend to have visionary thinking. It's amazing once you develop that state of mind how things start to move forward. It even works in as broad a scope as with nations. Let me give you a classic example, the space program. Don't know how many of you folks in this room are old enough to remember, but back in 1961, John Kennedy stood before the world and made a very bold statement. We're going to the moon, and we're going to the moon by the end of the decade. We're going to do it within 10 years. Extremely bold statement to make, considering that at the moment he made that statement, this country had one flight in space. One suborbital flight, manned flight, up and back again in 15 minutes, didn't even go around the Earth. But he stands up a couple days later and says, we're going to the moon, and we're going within 10 years. That's a vision. And it was interesting because I lived through those days, and the whole country was involved. Thousands of subcontractors, millions of people involved, everybody with one vision in mind to get there within a decade. About 3/4 of the way toward the process, we had a terrible tragedy. They had a spacecraft that actually burned up on the launch pad. 3 astronauts were lost of Apollo 1. It threw the whole program off. They had to go back and completely redesign the capsule, threw them off track by 2 years. So they came back and they redoubled their efforts. They made their deadline with less than 4 months to spare. That's an example of visionary thinking, and that's when the whole country had a clear-cut common purpose and vision. I remember they kept chanting, footprints on the moon, footprints on the moon. Everybody had a picture of what it was they were trying to accomplish. That's moving nations. Let's talk about moving individuals. Who's the richest man in the world? Bill Gates, right? I don't know how many of you know this guy's personal history. He dropped out of Harvard University in his sophomore year because he had a vision. He could clearly see the coming PC revolution. In his mind, it was as clear as day. Someday, everybody's going to have a computer on their desk. He drops out of Harvard in his sophomore year because he didn't want to waste 2 years at Harvard and maybe miss the boat. He's the richest man in the world because he had a vision. Who's the second richest man in the world? His name's Warren Buffett, the seer from Omaha, Nebraska. I'll tell you what this guy does. He studies companies. He'll sit down and look at their numbers. He look at the facts and figures. Then he goes out and he visits the companies, talks to management, talks to employees and people out on the floor, and he tries to form a picture in his mind of what he thinks about this company. Does he see this company coming out and moving forward, or does he see this company going down the tubes? And he buys undervalued companies. He buys companies that other analysts have looked at and said, this company is only worth $10 a share, and he'll say, in my mind, no, these guys have got their act together. They've got a common purpose. And pretty soon, they're going to be worth $50 a share. So he buys these companies low, and 9 times out of 10, this guy picks them right. They end up rising. He's the second richest man in the world because he has a very clear-cut vision of what he's trying to accomplish. I do not believe it's an accident that we call the ultra-high achievers in our culture visionaries.